I want to thank you for joining us in this study of the book of First Thessalonians. We're in First Thessalonians today, the 4th chapter, and we're going to pick up our study in verse number 11. Now, the Apostle Paul has been talking to the Thessalonian church, and he's been saying, you know what, you guys are loving people, but you need to excel. You need to continue to love. Now, we've talked about how God had taught the Thessalonians on how to love by being an example to them of someone who loves a person unconditionally. But now in verse number 11, the Apostle Paul begins to give us three areas or three things that we can use to show someone that we love them. This is what verse number 11 says. It says, "And make it your ambition to lead a quiet life, to attend to your own business, and work with your hands just as we commanded you." What's he saying here? The Apostle Paul is saying, this is how you can show somebody that you love them. He says, make it your ambition. In other words, let this be the center of your life. Let this be the focus of your life. You know, we hear people talk about being intentional. We talk about people, people talk about how you need to be focused. Well, Paul is giving us something that we need to focus on. And this is three different ways that we can show to someone that we love them. And so Paul says, make this your ambition. And the first thing that he says, and you might be amazed at this, but he says, and lead a quiet life. What in the world is Paul talking about? Paul is saying, lead a life of peace. Now, he's not talking about your relationship with God. He's talking about your relationship with other people. You know, the Bible tells us that we need to be at peace with all men as far as it depends upon us. We need to be people that are seeking to live a life of peace. Not a life of causing trouble, not a life of causing strife and fighting with each other. Yeah, we fight the devil. We fight principalities and powers. But when it comes to people, we need to be endeavoring, we need to set as our ambition, our focus in life, to live a life of peace. To be at peace with all men. You see, when we're at peace with people, you know what happens? People see the love of God. They see that we care about them. We don't want to fight them. Do you understand? You know, we're living in a time of tremendous turmoil, not only here in the United States of America, but around the world. People are at arms with each other. You know what? If you want to be an example of the love of God, begin to live a life of peace. What's the next thing that the Apostle Paul says? Attend to your own business. You ever run into someone that's always wanting to be in your business? Well, the Apostle Paul says don't do it. Why? Because you know what? People that are always wanting to be in somebody else's business usually have, in fact, I would say almost always have the wrong motive. If a person is all constantly wanting to manipulate and control you, you know what? They're not seeking your benefit. They're seeking their own benefit, their own will in your life. If a person is always wanting to drag out all the little morsels of gossip, you know what? They're not doing it because they love. They're doing it because they want attention drawn to themselves. They want people to see how much they know about situations. So the Apostle Paul is telling us, you guys, this is how you can be an example of loving. Set this as your ambition. Make sure that you stay out of other people's business. Do you understand? I can't put it any plainer than that. Just stay out of other people's business. And you say, well, I'm there to help you. Are you really there to help them? Check your motives. What are you really wanting to do? Stay out of other people's business. Don't be getting involved in other people's fights. Whew. That's pretty plain. Let's go on. And work with your hands. Work with your hands, just as we commanded you. What's Paul saying? Paul's saying, be responsible for yourself. How many of you realize that when you work with your hands, you're not only providing things for yourself, but you can also be providing things for other people? But when you're always sitting there saying, okay, give me, my name is Jim, do you understand that the Apostle Paul is telling us how to love one another? And how do we love one another? Well, one of the ways that Paul lists here is by working with our own hands, by being responsible for our own lives, by being responsible to bring in what we need for ourselves and for our families, but also being responsible of bringing in things for other people. Do you know that some people believe, and I guess I'm one of them, that if there wasn't sharing in the New Testament church, that the New Testament church would have probably never survived the persecution. And then verse number 12, the Apostle Paul says this, so that you will behave properly towards outsiders and not be in any need. You know, when people are constantly looking for what they can get, when they're constantly getting in business of other people, when they're constantly living a life of strife, you know what happens? The outsiders look at that and they say, you know what, I really don't want anything to do with that. So Paul says, behaving properly towards outsiders, towards the people who are not in the church, towards the people who are watching you and are determining whether God loves them or not by the way you act. So the Apostle Paul is giving us ways of showing the love of God towards others. My time is up for today. Thank you for watching.